So far we have seen what is the goal as prescribed by the Shastras. We have also seen what the Shastras contain. We have seen what are the do's and don'ts for a very peaceful and happy life. And we have also seen what is the Varnashrama. Now the next step is okay, goal is known. So obviously the next step would be to how to achieve that goal. So now we need to move in the direction of achieving that goal. Now as per the Shastras again, moksha is the goal, and the only method of attaining that goal is through knowledge. Because the whole problems we have is because of ignorance, and ignorance can only be removed by knowledge. No activity will be able to give you that goal. Only knowledge can help you to reach the goal. Now what kind of knowledge? That is the next question. Now broadly there are two types of knowledge. One is the external world knowledge, and the second one is the internal knowledge. We have technical terms for each of this. In Sanskrit, the external knowledge that we gain, it is called as apara vidya, and the internal knowledge about the self is called as para vidya. Our entire focus is on the external knowledge because that is what our senses are always looking for. So we spend our lives trying to assimilate, or first trying to get information and then converting that into knowledge. Now this knowledge is important for us to survive in this world, because without the external knowledge we cannot live in this world. So we need to have this external knowledge, and we gain specific knowledge, like we studied engineering so that we can earn our livelihood. So this knowledge helps us to earn a livelihood. So we carry on in this manner. We gather lot of information, we gather lot of knowledge, out of which hardly a fraction would be useful. Like we might, from school onwards, right up to the time we finish college, or even later if we have done our PG and all that, so many things we have learnt, but have we really applied any of these things in our lives? For example, just an example I am saying, we know a plus b the whole square is equal to a square plus 2ab plus b square. All of us know that, it is by hearted. But has any of us ever applied this in our lives at any time? So there's a lot of knowledge which is lying in our mind, which we have never used. Unfortunately, the main knowledge which we should all know is the knowledge of the self, which we don't know. So the whole process is to know the self, because without knowing the self we will not be able to attain the goal. In fact, the goal itself is to know the self. Okay, now how do we gain this knowledge? Because external knowledge we know where to get. Nowadays it's at the tip of the finger. You just go to Google, whatever information you want, you just type and you will get the knowledge. Or you want some specific knowledge, you want to gain mastery in that, we go to college, we attend so many courses to gain that specific knowledge. Now, how do we gain the knowledge of the self? So the Shastras again have prescribed certain texts which give this knowledge of the self. Now, like I told earlier, the Vedas can be divided into two parts. The first part we call it as Karma Kanda, which is all about doing action. What should be done, what should not be done, what to be done to gain a particular thing, what kind of rituals, what kind of everything is prescribed in that. So anything you want to gain, there are methods to do that which is prescribed in the Karma Kanda. The second part is called Jnana Kanda. It is also called as Vedanta. The end part of Vedas, that is one explanation. Veda Anta means the end part of Veda, which is the knowledge part. So each of the four Vedas, there is a Vedanta part. So Vedanta is purely about self-knowledge. The subject matter is self. In all there is no other subject matter. But it is approached in different ways. Normally, it is a dialogue between a teacher and a student. That is how all the texts connected to the Vedanta, that's how they are there. So, now to begin with, how do we proceed? What kind of text do we study to gain this knowledge? Again, the Shastras have prescribed a 3-step process of gaining the knowledge. Again, technically, it is called as Prasthanatrayam. The first step where we study, there are many texts. In fact, there are so many texts, it is difficult for us to actually count the number of texts. There are many texts which we call as Prakarana Grantha. They are not the main texts are the Upanishads. But there are other sub-texts which are called as Prakarana Grantha, which help us to get the basic knowledge so that we move on to the next stage of studying Upanishads. So again, there are many Upanishads. There are 1,000 odd Upanishads. So possibly a lifetime is not enough to study those. So traditionally we pick 10 Upanishads. These 10 are the ones on which Adi Shankara has written commentaries. So these texts are, if we have the inclination to study, then these 10 Upanishads cover the entire subject. So for a serious student of Vedanta or self-knowledge, the process is to first study the basic text called Prakarana Grantha, then have a deep study of the Upanishads, and then the third stage is called, the text covered in the third stage is called Brahma Sutra. Brahma Sutra is again a condensation of all this. So it requires a lot of interest and atmosphere to go through all these three. But we need to begin somewhere. So we will start with the basic text. Among the basic texts, we are going to look at a text called Tattva Bodah. So I had sent the soft copy to you. You might have seen the Sanskrit text with the English transliteration and a general meaning of that text. So this text, Tattva Bodah. Tattva means truth, essence. Bodah means knowledge. So here, the truth about the self is what is the subject matter. Now this text, first everybody would want to know who is the author of this text. Generally, it is credited to Adi Shankara, because any text which no author is specified is credited to Adi Shankara by default, because he is the most popular teacher in the last few centuries. But there are other people who say the style of writing of this text is not similar to what Adi Shankara's texts are. It could be some other Shankaracharya. It could be in fact from the Kanchi Mutt also. But it is not important who has written it. What is more important is what it contains. Because the whole idea is to study a text which will give us the basic information, and this is one text which is covering all the basic things which each of us should know. In fact, along with our other subjects, this also should have been taught at some level, either in school or in college, because it is as important to know yourself than knowing everything around you. So this text covers the basic things which all of us should know. So this is called Tattva Bodah. Now this is going to, initially we need to, this text will bring in some technical terms, because we need to get familiar with some of the technical terms which are used in this text, because we may not find equivalent translation words in English or any other language also. So this text will introduce us to some technical terms, and it is also going to give us knowledge about ourselves. Now, the text starts with a prayer. So the text is in actually prose form, as if you have gone through the soft copy you might have seen. It is actually, the text itself asks a question and it also gives the answer. So it is the form of a question and answer. It starts with a prayer. Like all texts connected to the Shastras, they all start with a prayer. Because without a prayer, whatever we do may not happen the way we want. So the prayer helps us to, probably the author, when he wrote this book, his prayer was this should be useful to everybody. This text should be read by as many people as possible, because it is useful for everybody. So that must have been his prayer, and probably his prayer would have been, has been answered to a large extent, because we don't know in which century he lived, but today also we are studying this text. So obviously his prayer has worked so far. So that is why all the texts, they begin with a prayer and they also end with a prayer. So we will start this text by reciting the first prayer. So I'll just chant. You can just, if you have the text in front of you, the soft copy, you can have a look at it. So it goes like this. Vasudevendra Yogindram Natva Jnana Pradam Gurum Mumukshunam Hitarthaya Tattva Bodah Vidiyate. So the prayer is, the author is saluting Vasudevendra, who is the king of all yogis, who is the bestower of knowledge. So he is offering his prayers to him for giving the knowledge. And what is the knowledge? Tattva Bodah, the knowledge of truth, is presented for the benefit of those who are desirous of liberation. This is the prayer. So what the author is saying is, I am praying to his Guru, and through his Guru he is praying to the Almighty to offer this text for those who are desirous of liberation. Mumukshu nam hitarthaya. Mumukshu is the one who is desirous of liberation. Moksham ichu. Moksham is the goal. Ichu means the one who is desirous. So from that it becomes mumukshu. So mumukshu hitarthaya means for the benefit of those who are desirous of liberation. I am offering this text called Tattva Bodah. So this is the first prayer to begin the text. So always when we start a text, even when we repeat the text, we always chant this prayer so that we acknowledge the person who has written it, and we also request the Almighty to help us understand this text also. Now let us move on to the subject matter, which starts in the next verse. I'll read it out. Sadhana chatushtaya sampannadhikarinam moksha sadhana bhutam tattva viveka prakaram vakshyamaha. This is the verse. So what does it say? The verse says, the author is going to describe the mode of discriminative knowledge of truth for liberation for the ones who are interested, who are endowed with four qualities, fourfold qualifications. So when you study anything, you need to qualify for that study. So when we joined engineering, the qualification was you should have passed your, in those days it was PUC or PTC, to be eligible to qualify for engineering. Like that, even for first standard, you need to qualify by passing UKG. So each step or each course has got certain qualifications. Now here he says the ones who have fourfold qualifications. So we need to know what are those fourfold qualifications to qualify to understand this text. The next verse is the question itself. Sadhana chatushtayam kim? What are those fourfold qualifications? That is the question. Then the answer is given Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. That is the first qualification. Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. That is the discriminative knowledge of the difference between what is timeless and what is time bound. So that is called as Vivekaha. So the what is permanent and impermanent. So the one who wants to get this knowledge, he should have this qualification called Viveka, which means you should know how to discriminate between what is permanent and what is impermanent. So that is the answer. Further it will be expanded. So as we go by, the text itself will clarify what each of these qualifications are. The next qualification that is required is Ihamutrartha Phala Bhoga Viragaha. So the next qualification is Vairagya. What is Vairagya? Dispassion towards all the sense objects, not only in this world but also other than this world, say the heavens. So dispassion towards the enjoyment of sense objects both in this world as well as in the heavens. So this is the second qualification. So the one who is desire of this knowledge has to have what is called as Vairagyam. That is a dispassion towards all the sense objects both in this world as well as the heavens. The third qualification is Shamadhi Shataka Sampattihi. Now this third qualification is the sixfold wealth that one should possess, which starts with Sama. The sixfold wealth, the first one is given as Sama and Adi means etc. So totally there are 6. So these 6 are Sama, Dama, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha and Samadhana. This will come later. I am just giving you what are the 6 wealth, sixfold wealth we should have to again get this to qualify for this knowledge. And the fourth one is Mumukshutvam cha iti. The fourth one is Mumukshutvam, the desire for liberation. In fact, this is the first qualification we should have. To gain any knowledge, unless you have a desire, you will not be able to gain that knowledge. So the basic knowledge, the basic requirement for any knowledge is you should be interested in it. If you want to study maths, you should be interested in maths. If you want to study engineering, you should be interested in engineering. If you want to play cricket, you should be interested in cricket. So anything you want to learn, so the basic qualification, you should have the desire to learn that. So this is something which has to come from within. So first qualification is actually Mumukshutvam, which is the basic desire. So if your desire is for freedom, then only the other things apply. If you ask even a lakh of people around, I am sure that hardly one or two may be desire of this knowledge. So it is very rare to find someone who would be interested in this knowledge. So basically, the whole process starts with the desire. So unless we have mumukshutvam, which has to come from within, the next step is not required. Because if you are not desirous of moksha, then there is no point in studying further. The other three qualifications can be obtained by practice. But you cannot obtain mumukshutvam through practice, because that has to come from within. You cannot practice, no, I should have a desire to know, we cannot do that. The desire is there within me, okay. Then I need the other three qualifications, which through practice, we can obtain the other three qualifications. The intensity of our desire will dictate how much we make effort to add the other qualifications. So the whole thing is driven by the simple desire to be free, which is moksha. So mumukshutvam is the basic qualification. Once you have mumukshutvam, you can develop viveka, vairagya, and the six-fold wealth, which is given in this text so far. So now we have understood the four qualifications required. One is viveka, which is the discriminative knowledge between what is permanent and what is impermanent. Second is vairagya, which is dispassion. So normally, even in Tamil we say vairagyam. So there are two types of vairagyam generally which people talk about. One is called the shamshana vairagyam. So we all develop this dispassion when we go to the burial ground. Oh, what is life? See, this man had so much and this thing finally ended up here. So we all develop this dispassion when we go to the burial ground. Once we come back, we all forget that and we get back to our day-to-day this thing. Same thing, other one is called prasava vairagyam, which ladies will know. So once they go through the pain of a delivery, they will say, okay, enough, no more. But then again it continues. In fact, those days it used to be innumerable. They used to have a football team or cricket team. Nowadays it's only a one or two. So you have a single player or a doubles player, that's all. But these are the two types of vairagyam normally we develop, which are very momentary. Once that event is over, then vairagyam is forgotten. So this is the second. The third one is the six-fold wealth, starting with sama, dama, uparama, titiksha, shraddha and samadhana. All this will be described individually as the text moves forward. And the most primary one is mumukshutvam, which is the basic desire for this knowledge, so that you gain moksha. So mumukshu means the one who is desire of moksha is called mumukshu. So this is the basic, what we have understood so far is the basic qualifications required to proceed further. Now the next question is nitya anitya vastu vivekah kaha. What is the discriminative knowledge between the temporary and the permanent? What is this knowledge we should have? The answer is nityavastvakam brahma tadvayatiriktam sarvamanityam ayameva nitya anitya vastu vivekaha. Here it says the timeless is called as Brahman. So all these technical terms have started appearing, like Vairagya, Viveka, Mumukshutvam. All these are technical terms which may not have an equivalent in any other language, least in English. Maybe some of these, like Vairagyam, probably in Tamil people may understand what is Vairagyam, but not in the same sense, but at least that, but you cannot translate Vairagyam. There is no equivalent English word which you can say dispassion, but it's only a rough estimate. So these technical terms we need to be familiar with, because then only we will be able to understand the text. So we will, as we go by, these technical terms will appear, so we will try and understand each as it comes. So this particular verse says the timeless is called Brahman. So for the moment we will name this timeless entity as Brahman. Other than that, everything else is time bound. So there is only one thing which is timeless, everything else is time bound. The time period may vary for each object. For example, for a human being, our time may be, in general you can say 100 years. For an animal like a dog, it could be 15 years. For a plant, it could be a few days. A mosquito, it could be a few hours. But everything has got a expiry date. The only thing which doesn't have an expiry date, which is always there, is called as Brahman. So that is the first thing we need to know. Other than Brahman, everything else that we see is all time bound. The next is Viragaha Kaha. What is Vairagya? Like already explained earlier, Vairagya is basically the absence of desire for all kinds of enjoyments here as well as in the next world, the heavens also. So absolute Vairagya means there is no desire for anything in this world, as well as we don't even desire anything even in the heavens. So this, how do we understand this? Because how can we live without any desire? It's a process. Once we understand the difference between what is permanent and impermanent, slowly we can reduce those desires and come to a point where the desires, we can never remove desires completely, because without desire we cannot live, but we can bring it to a point where it's almost minimal. So Vairagya is the desires, absence of desires for this world as well as in the heavens. Shamadhi sadhana sampatti kaha. What is the accomplishment of sadhana of sama? What is this sama, dhamma, parama, etc.? This is the question. Shamo, dhamma, uparama, titiksha, shraddha, samadhanam, cha iti. So initially it just said Shama, etc. Now here, I had already mentioned this earlier, it describes what are the other 5 also, the wealth we should have. It starts with Sama, then Dama, then Uparama, then Titiksha, then Shraddha, and the last one is called Samadhana. So these are the six-fold wealth, which is one of the qualifications. So among the four qualifications, we have to possess this six-fold wealth. Each of this will be further broken down and to be understood. What is Sama, what is Dhamma, each one we will be taking. So today we will wind up with this, because I think it will take a little while to get all this into the mind, because these are, first of all, the subject itself is something new, and a lot of technical terms come into the picture. So our mind has to have that little time to assimilate whatever. So there's no point in cramming everything in one session. So we will stop here, and then we will be continuing this text as it unfolds. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, knowing yourself. They say actually, if you know yourself, you don't need to know anything else, because it is as well known. At the macro level, everything will be known. Only the micro level we are trying to understand the external knowledge. But if you know this, like when you remember that famous race between Ganapati and Muruga, where you go around the world. So Muruga immediately took his peacock and went all around the world and came back. But Ganapati said, my whole world is my parents. So he went round and he got the prize. So similarly, we need not go all around. If you know yourself, you know everything. So that is the basic this thing of self-knowledge. So we will proceed a step at a time. So today it was just sort of an introduction to what we are going to see. Later, this even what is a physical body, what is a Sukshma Sharira or the subtle body, how the physical body we say are made up of 5 elements, there is a process called grossification through which all the elements are subtle, but there is a process called grossification through which these subtle elements are converted to a gross